The pirates. There was a pause even as the Nagasha beheld that Franklin was suddenly equal to her. He casually brushes his left shoulder with his right hand before brutally uppercutting her with his left. The Nagasha reels and then snaps back with a huge bombardment of screaming electrical power that Franklin rips into his right hand and compresses into a blade to turn it back on her. As this happens, Miles braces himself and moves to try and catch as the rest of the team is suddenly zooming in, far too fast and far too clearly for anything to be real. "Is everyone all right?" "The hell is going on?" Miles demands, as he does indeed have to catch a few of them, and they sort of chain together by grabbing each other and zoom down. Gravity, friction, and inertia seem to be more suggestions than physics. "Reality is off its meds, or it's been issued the good stuff," Jake remarks smartly, even as Marcus points at nothing less than a paper letter and catches it easily. Marcus turns it over and it unfolds into a large piece of paper. He scans it and then passes it to Miles. In the background, Franklin catches an enormous fireball that is simultaneously all the spite that could ever be and drips with acidic contempt for others, even as it pushes him back and seems to grind against his hand and shred its own mass against his sheer will. Everything is now within the axiom, and within this contained area, all that matters is will. "I can't use null, I don't know what will happen. We're in and part of the axiom now. Find the heart of this madness and stop it so that I can start using a proper trump card. I'll keep her as busy as possible." Miles reads out loud, and everyone turns to look as the acidic fireball of spite is crushed in one hand, despite being 100 times Franklin's size, and it seems to initiate a big bang. "All in favor of sobering up reality?" "Aye." The rest of the men state at once, even as they watch Franklin grab a forming galaxy and turns it into a throwing star that replicates itself into a wall of spinning galaxies that homes in on and cascades into the Nagasha. She in turn charges at him with a psychotic fury and lunges at him with what seems to be an unending pillar of barbed hooks of wrath and clawing contempt. His deflection of the purple pillar crackling with hooks produces enough sparks that he should logically be gouging trenches into it with his fingers. But it's as endless as he is. "Then how do we depart the madness and sever it?" Victor asks, as claws shatter against Franklin even as his coat sleeve frays at the edges with him deflecting the pillar. He's being pushed back. However, the Nagasha was only using her hands and arms for that attack, and her rattle is unaccounted for. It begins to shake, and all the lights in the universe gather to her. "Well, this is all an axiom now, right? It's all will and imagination. Those two just have more practice. We can do the same things." "The playing field only looks uneven. I scared the fuck out of her with my gunshot, and that gave Franklin the opening to do this," Miles says as all light is concentrated into a sword that is caught just barely by the blade with Franklin's left hand as his right deals with the pillar. Then the Nagasha spits poison at his face, only for it to be countered by a roar that erupts into a wave of raw force. More practiced is right. "I don't have the head for that kind of madness," Jean-Luc remarks in shock, and Beck starts laughing. "Not the time, man." "No! The perfect time! Don't you get it?" Beck asks, and everyone looks confused. He points at Franklin, who shatters the sword of all light in the universe and plunges everything into darkness. The Nagasha vanishes in response, and Franklin looks around for a moment, the only light in the skies, then a pair of yellow eyes so massive that he's silhouetted by the light pouring out from one alone. "Get what?" Sai asks as Franklin charges straight at the eyes and expands to match it. This shocks the Nagasha even as he slams the top of his head into her face for a brutal headbutt. They're setting the battlefield, but they're too busy fighting each other. So if we can screw with the setting details, we might be able to open either a passage to the prize or shift the kind of fight into something Franklin can outright win rather than this unending contest of who can think of bigger. Because those two are basically just multiplying infinity by the biggest numbers they can think of, and we've gone well and truly past the point of stupid. "Change the genre?" Marcus asks in shock. "We're in a reality that's all about how it's perceived, right? Well, we got the numbers, so let's change the story style. They're fighting as gods, as things whose mere presence creates realities. A big contest on who can think of the most stupid thing. But what if that's not the contest? We make this about hand-to-hand combat and Franklin can use her as a jump rope," Ryu realizes. In the background, the Nagasha tries to squeeze down on Franklin with her coils, even as his arms and hands are busy deflecting an unending barrage from her six. However, his coat being made of plasma seems to be much more relevant as she starts to burn. Canny, we don't know anything about this woman beyond the fact that she rigged this ship to send us to her personal wonderland, Lou says before he grins. But if we keep changing the game to find one where Franklin can outright win, we might not only get her killed and finished, but will likely scare out whatever is at the source of the madness is. Behind them, reality seems to shatter as Franklin goes nuclear and detonates with obscene power. The universe is just a white emptiness with the Nagasha as a black silhouette with yellow eyes. Yet Franklin is still there, as a brighter point, as the center of the white light that glares down at the being of darkness. He's gone from Star Titan to light embodied. He just got control, Sai remarks as suddenly Franklin seems infinitely large and stomps onto the Nagasha like one would a slug. She catches his foot and holds it steady. Her rattle methodically shakes as reality starts to crack. Everything is the inside of a white egg with unending darkness pressing down to crush them all. Bullshit, he did. We're changing the subject, Miles says before thinking. Now how do we do this? It's axiom. Will is the way. Beck says as the egg collapses and the light embodied catches the stabbing claws of darkness with his hands and feet to prevent himself from being crushed. Just back me up. I've got an idea. Oh, this ought to be good, Miles says, turning to look right at Beck even as the rest of the group does. Oh? They're making progress, Franklin notes as everything shifts. No longer is he some kind of titan. The rules are strict and clear. The room for nonsense, however, is still exceptional. His linen-wrapped fingers dig into the desert sands and withdraws a massive bow with arrows the size of spears. The harsh burning winds pull at his linen cloak. It's stained red from the blood of his foes. He is now a hunter along the side of the Nile, and his prey is close. He crests a dune before climbing a small hill that shows the river in the distance. There is the Nagasha, cursing and screaming as she fends off a crocodile. The sheer jarring differences has caused her great panic and confusion. Has she forgotten that she has forged a malleable reality? It matters not. He plants his feet and withdraws one of his enormous arrows. With creaks and groans, the immense bow slowly bends as he applies more tension than any mortal man could ever muster on earth to the ungodly weapon. Or perhaps it is godly. He'll have to look up who the Egyptian god of the hunt is when this is over, because he's clearly playing the part of their champion. He lets the spear-sized arrow fly and it soars through the air with unnatural ease. Her scream as it pins her to the ground is nearly musical and he pulls out a second arrow. In the distance, he can see her spot him even as he lets fly with the second shot. She burrows into the ground and he feels the stone under his feet shake and crack. She's adapting. We need another setting, Miles says as Beck curses that the bitch is summoning giant snakes from underground. Obvious in hindsight. Well, since we're going national, focus on Moa, Jean-Luc says, and everyone turns to him. Time for a classic? Three Musketeers? Victor asks, and Jean-Luc scoffs. No, Jean-Luc says, and reality shifts. For just a flicker, they spot something glowing with axiom. It's gone before anything else can be deciphered. Franklin smiles as he snags a glass of wine off a serving man's tray and suppresses a snicker that would give him away. He has no idea where he is, but if he's confused, the snake is going to be unable to even form coherent thoughts. He's dressed in silken finery, with a bright burgundy vest hidden under a navy blue waistcoat, and he hasn't looked down enough to check his pants. He doesn't want to break character. No matter how much the absurd ruffle on his neck makes him want to just rip it off. He hates the feelings that clothing like that brings up. A gunshot causes the gentle violin music to crash to a stop before being cut by a scream of terror. Where is he? The Nagasha screams out, and Franklin resists, rolling his eyes. Clearly this is not her setting. Now, if he could figure out what the setting is besides something to do with ballrooms, then he'd be a bit more comfortable himself. Franklin checks his own reflection in his wine glass and represses a smirk as he adopts a look of shock and horror. He looks like Fop. Perfect. Sir? A letter has arrived for you, Baron Smith. A server says, and Franklin accepts the letter as he glances between the wine glass and the letter, and he quickly drinks down the wine and then hands the glass to the server, who nods to him and quickly bustles away. He carefully unfolds the letter and blinks. Like the setting? It's a classic written by Baroness Orczy. This should give you a clean shot on the girl, possibly a kill shot. When you take it, we'll change again. We think we spotted the heart, so we'll need a few more shifts and you'll need to keep her distracted. Godspeed. Baron Martin. I must confess, I've never seen such a language before. A man says from behind Franklin he's absurdly well-dressed and has very delicate hands that he offers to Franklin with a smile. Franklin shakes his hand and smiles in return. It's a rather foreign trade language, spoken by a large number of rather savage matriarchal tribes. Matriarchal? They espouse women ruling over men, Franklin returns, and the man blinks. Well, I suppose my wife does. I what, Percy? A rather annoyed woman asks, and the man visibly flinches. There's something overdramatic about it. The man's acting. Oh dear, I believe that I've started something. I do apologize. Pardon me? Franklin says, bustling off. He quickly feels around the inside of his coat to find a pistol and smiles. He quickly slips up behind the Nagasha to find that she's a woman in a serpent-themed dress, struggling to keep balanced and lashing out with knives, even as her 4 excess arms are attempting to burst forth from the sides. She's clearly trying to get her form familiar again and is very distracted. In a single moment, Franklin draws his pistol and fires it right between the eyes. She shifts and hops with unnatural speeds and catches the bullet in her teeth. Well, shit. Reality reshuffles once more, and he's looking out from under a helmet with a mask on it to a monochrome world. A quick glance at those around him confirms that he's surrounded by samurai. A scream of fury fills the air before he can gather his thoughts. What was that? He asks, and his words come out in Japanese with tiny white subtitles at the bottom of his vision. Someone's clearly having fun with this one. The Nagasha bursts out of the woods with an unholy scream, looking like a cross between a mad scientist's unholy experiment and a demon. Those around him scream yokai in terror, and several break and run. Franklin draws his sword and charges. Slay the beast! He screams as he dodges a spit of burning blood, the only color in the otherwise black and white world, and slices into one of her hands. Then he's suddenly sitting at a bar. The shifts are getting faster. If they have spotted something, then they're clearly homing in on it, and he needs to keep her attention all the more. What am I in now? He asks himself and sees the subtitles again. He's fairly certain he just spoke Chinese. A wire fu movie? It would fit all the Asian-looking faces. Of course, he stands out like a flare as he looks into the drink in his hand. He's wearing a red cape over top armor with a sword to his side. Naga! There is a Naga seeking blood! A man screams, running into the bar in terror. Franklin rises up and hurries out. Sure enough, she's out there attacking people at random now. Clearly she's distracted and losing patience. Franklin draws his jean and tosses it into the air before jumping up, spinning and delivering a kick to the pommel of the weapon that sends it flying into her back like a spear. Reality shifts once more. Just a few more, Miles whispers, and Franklin nods even as things reform. He spurs his horse onwards to try and keep pace with the train. Whatever's going on, the train's important. Maybe he has to hijack it? He stands up in the saddle as the horse starts to lag and then jumps the last few feet to grab onto the railing of the caboose. The sheer twisting winds blow his hat off, and he mentally curses even as his kerchief, bright red, slaps him in his face. All right, you varmint, let's see how well you do a six-shooter jig, Franklin says out loud and grins at how stupid it sounds. He finds the door locked and then shoulders it open with a growl. The Nagasha turns to him in shock, still half woman and half snake, but her extra arms are gone. Reach for the sky! What are you even doing? She demands before he shoots and reality shifts again. Franklin is now in a three-piece suit and clearly feels the pieces of a Tommy gun broken down in his jacket. Hey! Frankie, my man! Lot going on tonight, Jake says as the bartender as he passes Franklin a drink. You guys are doing a banger of a job. Where is she this time? Franklin asks, staying in character. The whiskey is a harsh burn on his throat, but a welcome one that focuses him. If it's even real. We need you to stretch this one out. We managed to get Path to the prize open, and we need her looking for you. So that was the last change. Think you can do things as Frankie Phibbs? Frankie Phibbs? Probably not Flirty Frankie? Maybe, Franklin says, and Jake snorts in amusement. If all else fails, we're switching to a sports movie. So be ready to tackle someone. I've not played much football, Franklin admits, and Jake shrugs before leaning in. We were able to make the Corps a prize and in play in this unreality, so we got the boys doing a bank heist as you keep her busy. If that fails, then the next shift will make it the trophy for the finals game. Real easy. And where will she be in that game? Or for that matter, where is she now? She's in the club now, Jake says, pointing down to the next room where the music is coming from. She'll be a cheerleader trying to figure out which way is up in the next one. Just keep her eyes on you and we should be able to pull this off. All right, I'll get to it, and don't let Jean-Luc have too much fun with the dynamite. Too late, my brother, too late, Jake says, and Franklin chuckles. Right, well, I'll get to it. Although, thank you for not doing this with magical girls. I really don't think I could have pulled of a miniskirt. Franklin jokes, and Jake snorts so hard he nearly doubles over. There were some genres off limits. Any with high technology or blatant magic was a no-go, so magical girls, mecha, fantasy, and sci-fi were off the list. Never been happier to be denied my favorite entertainment, Franklin says, and Jake grins. Magical girls? Hey, some are pretty darn good, Franklin volleys back and gets a chuckle. Anyways, I'll keep her busy. You just bust open that vault, all right? We're on in it, Frankie, man. We're on it, Jake assures him, and Franklin nods before throwing back the whiskey. Good luck scoring it. I'm gonna need it. The woman's a snake, he says, and gets a heh of amusement as he turns and leaves for the dance room. He spots her easily enough and catches her as she stumbles. May I have this dance? He asks, and she gasps at the sight of his face. What is going on? How are you doing this? She asks as he takes in the fact that while she looks human, possibly Arabic, she still has her yellow eyes, and her true form is in a tattoo coiled around her arm. Beyond that, she's in a shimmering black cocktail dress and struggling to stay upright in high heels. The opera gloves go up to her elbows, and she has a feathery boa to complete the look. Magic, he says with a grin. To be particular, the oldest of human magics, misdirection. Not that he's going to tell her that. But I can't feel the axiom. I changed the settings to filter it out bit by bit. We are now deep in null. No axiom to be found. Franklin smoothly lies as he wonders if she noticed that the place with the fancy costumes where he shot her with the flintlock was utterly non-magical as well. Maybe, maybe not. Who are you? You're one of those humans. Only they would know what a null-drenched hellscape is like enough to remake one, she asks in shock. Indeed, though I must confess I have a few questions of my own, Franklin says, leading her around to stand near the band. Hey, gents, mind a slower song next? The lady's on some delicate ankles. The music slows as he requested, and he leads the confused Nagasha further onto the dance floor. So, you have questions? Mostly the whys of it. You're clearly a smart woman, a woman of means and skills. Why do something as base and cruel as slave trading to make money? I sensed the Kutha in your ship. You are rolling in credits. Yes, all of them from selling idiots to have better purpose. If any of them were worth the freedom I take from them, then they'd break out. It's that simple. A life is just another product, a natural resource to be exploited. Those that claw out to freedom can have it. They've earned it. Those that haven't don't deserve it. Otherwise, they just waste their lives without purpose or cause. Really, it's a service to slave and slave owner both. The slave gets purpose, the owner gets a slave. Nice and simple. You say it like it's simple, but there are many matters to consider, Franklin remarks as he slowly guides her into a slow dance. Oh? Like what? Like the fact that your tune would change in an instant if you were under the whip hand. It's convenient to argue for dominance of the strong when you're in a position of power, but following through when you're not is a fair bit harder. Oh, you think I'm helpless now? That I can't do anything without axiom? I think you struggle to stand upright. I can feel you pressing a huge amount of your weight on my shoulder to keep yourself upright. If you even start to move around with any speed, you'll only break your ankles in those shoes, Franklin says gently. And what do you think about this? She asks, pressing a tiny gun into his stomach. Do it, he dares her, and she blinks. What? Do it. He then leans in as his grip tightens to painful levels. Do you still feel like you're in control? His hand reaches around and grabs the back of her neck with a vice-like grip, and her eyes go wide with fear. Do you still feel like you're in control? He asks again, and she starts to shake. The unreality crashes, and suddenly Franklin is face-to-face to an augmented Nagasha woman, and he quickly runs a knockout effect through her. She slumps in his arms, and he pulls out one of his disruption needles and stretches it into a thin band that he infuses with the sleeping effect and wraps around her forehead. Franklin here, the witch is out cold. I repeat, the witch is out cold. He reports into his communicator and can hear some cheering from the rest of the guys. Good, stay with her and make sure she stays alive. We've got hundreds of clones down here, all of them in varying stages of development. But only 10 of them are too young to inhabit. Make sure she can't run into a new body. That is your first priority, soldier. Miles reports and Franklin's eyes go wide at the implications. Sir, yes, sir, he says before looking down at the woman who's even more dangerous than he thought. The pirates. So that's what happened. Miles finishes explaining over the comm as Psy steers the ship into orbit. A reality-bending axiom adept with an army of clone bodies to revive from when you killed her, Agenda asks in a stunned tone. Yes. Whose name you never learned because you kept interrupting at muzzle velocity. We're of the opinion that if your enemy has breathing room, then you've done something wrong. And whose reality bending was aided by the strangest axiom-infused thing you've ever, and I quote, blown the fuck up, and a literal fortune in refined Kutha, Agenda asks. Yes, if we were to strip it all off the walls, it should easily pay for all the defenses you've been planning with at least half of it left over. While the news of a very successful looting spree is always welcome, I'm trying to bend my mind around the fact that there's an advanced cloning facility on that ship. Yeah, that's going to need a delicate touch. There are hundreds of her clones in there, and we're not sure if they're all mental copies of her for her consciousness to inhabit, or if her consciousness takes the memories with it and they're all blank slates. And Franklin can't figure that out because his medical degree is currently written in crayon, and he's busy making sure she doesn't wake up and start fighting all over again. Agenda's tone is very tightly controlled. She's either furious or trying desperately not to break out in laughter. That about sums up the situation. We're also hacking into more and more of the ship with help from the ground. Apparently there's a small cult about uploaded minds and things like that, the Church of the Digital Soul. We've set up communications with this ship, and they're eating through the protections and giving us more and more access. Technically, they could probably steer the ship in themselves without our input at this point. They really seem to know what they're doing. I suggest we give them some official duties, and they'd probably be thrilled at the steady work. If nothing else, they could easily get through the ship's systems. If they're who I think they are, then we'll have plenty for them to do. Oh yeah, if ruling Vutsa has taught me anything, is that the most important thing a ruler can do is not only find a use for everyone, but make sure they're willing, if not happy, to do it. Not to mention it tends to keep people out of trouble if they've got honest, steady work. Miles says with a grin, and there's a snort, followed by a giggle as whatever Wall's agenda had finally break down and she puts him on hold. How are things looking? He asks Psy, who grins up at him. They'd found a closet with cleaning supplies not too far off, and the men who still had too much energy after the excitement and weren't going to be much help in piloting the ship had been put to use in shifting all the gore on the main bridge. The room getting cleaned had visibly made the Indian man more comfortable as they worked, and he was now at a calm and almost happy state. ETA 10 minutes to stable orbit. After that, the girls in the computer will help me bring the ship down to the yards where we can start to really go through this beast with a fine tooth comb. The descent should take us about a half hour to do things nice and slow, so we're out for a while yet. Psy answers calmly. I've also managed to get the scanners over here sorted, Marcus adds from one of the side panels. All 5 ships are under our control. The one whose power core we blew is being approached by a bunch of tugs. We've got a clean sweep and a complete win. We barely got the win. The snake bitch gave us all a nasty surprise and kept pulling out new ones. If Franklin wasn't an obsessive maniac about Axiom, then we'd all be either slaves to the bitch or dead as doornails. I don't like luck being the deciding factor. We need to step up our Axiom training again, Miles says, and there are grim looks all over the bridge. I suppose that means I'll be putting together some lesson plans then, Franklin says from where he's sitting with the Nagasha's head in his lap. The scene almost looks tender, if it wasn't for the fact that his right hand is literally glowing with power as he makes 1,000% sure she's not coming out of the coma, and his left is slowly wearing away the tattoo on the back of her head to make her next death a little more permanent. Yes, I want to be able to find that point where Axiom collapses and use it, Miles says, and Franklin clucks his tongue. There are few good ways to measure it. I can't really put it into numbers so much as a sensation. So it'll take a lot of one-on-one to get there, Franklin says. You haven't looked this up in the galaxy at large? I'd have thought you'd be all over it. I keep trying and keep getting distracted. The race that understands null the best and can quantify and detect it the easiest is the species most vulnerable to it. Then I get off track and later find out I've been staring at the picture of what's effectively a mathematical equation with tits for an hour. Can I buy a vowel? The hell does that even mean? Jake demands in shock, and Franklin sighs. They're basically axiom elementals, for lack of a better term. There was a huge religious undertaking by the Gravid faith some centuries back to mathematically prove that motherhood was the single most sacred calling that anything, even math itself, could bring about. I'm still trying to figure out what's religious dogma and what's actually useful information, but the end result was a new species unlike any before it. Effectively, they're a sentient fertility equation, for the lack of a better term. What? Marcus demands in shock. There is a species whose physical form is composed entirely of axiom and defined by math the way we're defined by DNA. It's goddamn bonkers, and just trying to figure it all out is like looking at how your computer's OS is put together but only in binary. And they're effectively a fertility equation? Miles asks slowly to try and understand what Franklin is explaining to him. Yes, bipedal axiom omnivore 0 to 100 number 1, the Gravia. The race is made of axiom, so null is so obscenely dangerous to them that they've categorized it down to a point where they can detect where it will form naturally and counter it to try and prevent null from forming entirely. To them, cruel space is literal hell, and it's their race that had it officially categorized as cruel space. How often do you get lost trying to figure these things out when you research null? Miles asks. Almost every time. The static images of these women are odd enough, but they're in more dimensions than I can truly understand. These women are straight up just... Franklin drifts off. They're what? It looks like they're moving and growing and shrinking all at once, even when they're perfectly still. It's bonkers, Franklin says. Okay, so there's a race that's very weak to null and are rightfully scared of it, but have studied it. Got it, Miles says. Now answer the question. Can you teach us to manifest null at will? Yes. But I want you all to know that you need to be really careful with it. Most women it knocks out. Agravia? Instant death in even tiny quantities. If they're a distance away, then it's a slow and gruesome death. If they're far away, then it's very, very painful, Franklin says, and Miles nods. Right, keep the collateral down. Reasonable. Miles notes and Franklin nods. I'll go around and give you all some quick and dirty lessons. There are some powerful tricks I figured out, and a few that are getting passed around the Dauntless, which I'll help you all refine. Franklin promises before pumping his fist in triumph. And the tattoo is gone. She's at least partially contained. Good. Which leaves us the question of what we're going to do with her, Miles says, and Franklin snorts. You've got an idea? You're the Duke. Justice on this world is yours and the captain's wheelhouse, Franklin says. He's right, you know, this is both a chance to set an example and to send a message, Marcus says. Of course, that can go in all sorts of different ways. It might scare off some types, but others might take it like a challenge. Something to think about, then, Miles says as he stands at ease and overlooks the entire bridge. Is this how the Admiral feels? Knowing that his every action could bring about peace or doom and lives could end or be preserved on the advisedness of his actions? You're thinking out loud, Marcus says simply, and Miles coughs into his fist and squares his shoulders. There's a snort of amusement that goes through the men as they start to descend down. Then Miles's communicator goes off. Yes? All right. We've got a bunch of the ships already down under our control. Yours is going to be on the absolute end due to that cloning lab. Our plans for that is to break it down and spread out its equipment over the planet for the hospitals in the major cities, and we need a tally at just how much Kutha is in that ship. Not to mention we need to see if there are any recordings of that reality shifting. I want to see for myself what it was like, Agenda says, and Miles nods with a grin. And the fact that replays of Franklin's fights with Butcher Bitch and Thunderthought are still being circulated, and you want to see if you can make lightning strike twice? Darling, if you can make money off of something, you should make money off of something. Not to mention, I want to see what happens when there are no rules. Pretty bullshit, to be honest. They got caught in a loop of I'm bigger than you, and then the other would go no. I'm this much bigger than you. It was very silly, so we changed the rules around. Then we kept changing it until there was no more axiom silliness, and he was able to do his job of distracting her without something blowing up or getting shot. Really? In order to get them to stop being silly, you had to take away all the axiom? Yes, they're very silly people, Miles says with a teasing grin towards Franklin. Oi, he protests, and there's a laugh from Agenda. Well, now I'm even more eager to see it. Your re-entry vector is good. How much is due to your men, and how much is due to the digital soul girls? We're doing our fair share? Miles asks. So 1/100th? Agenda asks in a teasing tone, and Miles considers the level of skill his team has for piloting capital class ships. Yes, he says, and she breaks off into undignified guffaws of amusement. Hey, we're a small team of soldiers, not a crew of pilots. A team of soldiers. We can capture a ship easy, but knowing what to do with it beyond reading the freaking owner's manual and try not to break it is beyond us. Beyond you. I, on the other hand, am learning. Sai counters with a smile from his position. And if you take your hands off those controls, I'm willing to wager the ship won't even shudder as the digitals guide it in. Shush, just let me have this, Sai says, and Miles chuckles.